Katie Johnson woke up at 5:30 a.m., as she always did. Her routine was sacred. Rise, shower quietly, slip into something understated, and head to the kitchen before he appeared. Charles Bennett, her husband of 2 years and CEO of Bennett Enterprises, always had his coffee at exactly 6:15 a.m., 15 minutes. That's all she had to eat and vanish. Their marriage had been arranged when her father's company, Johnson Imports, teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. The Bennetts needed a respectable wife for Charles, and the Johnsons needed cash. Simple as that. A business deal dressed up as a wedding. In 2 years, they'd exchanged fewer than 100 words. That Thursday morning in Seattle, something felt off. When Katie descended to the sleek, modern kitchen of their waterfront mansion, Charles was already there, sharp in his charcoal suit, hazel eyes glued to his phone. She froze. This had never happened before. "Katie." His deep voice made her take a step back. "Yes?" Her voice came out softer than she intended. "Do you have anything suitable for a corporate event?" He didn't look up from his screen. "I don't understand." "It's a simple question. Do you own a dress appropriate for accompanying the CEO of Bennett Enterprises to a gala dinner?" Her heart raced. In 2 years, she'd never appeared in public by his side. "Why are you asking me this?" Charles finally looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "Because you're coming with me tomorrow night. Washington Business Association event, 7 p.m. "But why? You've never—" "I need to look like a stable family man," he cut her off, his tone icy. "So you're my wife, at least on paper. International investors will be there, multi-million-dollar deals." The words hit her like a slap. Katie felt her cheeks flush with humiliation, but held her composure. "And if I don't want to go?" Charles raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard by her defiance. "That's not an option, Katie. It's a duty." "Duty?" she echoed bitterly. "Like everything in my life." For a moment, something flickered across his face, almost like regret, but it vanished quickly. "You need to look the part," he continued. Katie lifted her chin, pride flaring. "Look the part? You don't even know who I am, Charles. In years, you've never bothered to find out. I know enough. Then tell me my favorite food, what I studied in college, what I do during the long hours you ignore me in this house." Charles stayed silent, visibly uncomfortable. "That's what I thought." Katie sighed. "I'll go to your event, Mr. Bennett, but not because it's a duty. I'm going because after years of being invisible, I'm curious to see this world you've chosen over me." She brushed past him, leaving the kitchen with her head high. Charles stood there, watching her climb the stairs. For the first time in 2 years, he truly saw the woman he'd married. Katie had a graceful presence, even in her simple clothes. There was strength in her movements, dignity in her poise. How had he never noticed this before? Upstairs, Katie sat on her bed, heart pounding. Tomorrow night, for the first time in 2 years, she'd be seen publicly as Katie Bennett. The question was she ready for what that might bring? Downstairs, Charles lingered in the kitchen, feeling an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. Why had her reaction shaken him so deeply? The next evening, Katie checked her reflection in the mirror for the 20th time. The burgundy dress she'd chosen was simple, but elegant, the only one she owned suitable for a formal event. At exactly 7 p.m., as she descended the stairs, Charles waited in the living room, impeccable in a black tuxedo. When he saw her, he paused, as if something about her caught him off guard. "You look fine," he said, but Katie noticed his eyes lingered longer than necessary. The car took them to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in downtown Seattle. The ride was silent, but neither of them knew that night would change everything. In the hotel's grand ballroom, hundreds of business tycoons, investors, and Seattle's elite mingled over champagne and deal-making. For the first time since her marriage, Katie felt alive. "Charles," a charming man approached, his suit tailored to perfection. "What a pleasant surprise, you've never introduced us to your wife." "James Carter," Charles said formally, "global investor. Katie, my wife." James kissed her hand with warmth. "Delighted, Mrs. Bennett. May I say Charles is a lucky man?" Katie smiled, a genuine smile Charles had never seen before. "The pleasure's mine, Mr. Carter. Please call me James. Tell me, what do you do besides light up every room you enter?" For the first time, someone was genuinely curious about her. Katie blossomed. "I graduated with a degree in business administration and earned an MBA," she replied, ignoring Charles's surprised glance. "I've always been passionate about corporate strategy and investments." "Fascinating. You should be working with your husband." "Sadly, I've never been given that chance." James shot a curious look at Charles. "Well, if you ever want a second opinion on investments, I'd love to chat." All evening, Katie shone. She discussed economics, art, literature. She was radiant, confident, alive. And Charles, for the first time, saw the extraordinary woman he'd ignored for years. But what unsettled him most was how other men looked at her. How James couldn't take his eyes off her. How she smiled at others in a way she'd never smiled at him. And when James parted with, "I hope we can grab dinner soon to talk business," and Katie replied, "That'd be lovely," Charles felt something he'd never experienced before: jealousy. Raw, wild, uncontrollable jealousy. The ride home was heavy with silence, but different now. Charles couldn't stop thinking about the woman beside him. And Katie, for the first time in 2 years, felt like a real person. Neither knew that night had planted the seed of a transformation that would change their lives forever. Sunlight streamed through the linen curtains of Katie's bedroom, but she barely noticed. She sat on the bed's edge, clutching her phone with a message from James Carter. "It was a pleasure meeting you last night, Mrs. Bennet. I'd love to invite you to dinner tonight. Just us, to discuss business ideas." "What do you say?" She read it 3 times, her heart torn between curiosity and caution. James had been charming with his easy smile and genuine interest, but what made her hesitate wasn't him, it was Charles. The memory of his tense, unreadable look in the car lingered. In the kitchen, the scent of fresh coffee startled her. Charles never made his own coffee. When she descended, she found him standing there, pouring black coffee into a mug. He wore a navy dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing toned forearms. For the first time, Katie noticed how human he looked outside his perfect suits. "Morning," he said, his voice lacking its usual chill, almost tentative. "Morning," she replied, keeping her distance. She grabbed an apple from the basket and began slicing it, trying to ignore his presence. "About last night," Charles started, then paused, choosing his words. "You did well. Better than I expected." Katie raised her eyes, surprised. A compliment. From Charles. "Thanks," she said dryly. "I didn't know you noticed." He frowned but didn't respond. Instead, he asked, "What did you think of the event?" She hesitated. It was the first time in 2 years he'd initiated a real conversation. "It was interesting, engaging people, unexpected talks." Like James Carter. His tone was neutral, but there was an edge to it. Katie felt a flush creep up her face. He was kind, polite, different from others who only talk numbers. Charles set his mug down harder than necessary. "Kind," he repeated, as if testing the word. "He invited you out, didn't he? He asked me for your number." She froze, knife still in hand. "And if he did?" she shot back, defiant. "You've never cared what I do." "That's not true," he said, but his voice betrayed uncertainty. For the first time, Charles seemed off balance, his hazel eyes fixed on her with an intensity that disarmed her. "Not true?" She stepped forward, the apple forgotten. 2 years, Charles, 2 years, and you never asked how I was, what I felt, what I wanted. Now, because a man treated me like a person, you suddenly care." He opened his mouth but said nothing. The silence was thick with unspoken words. Finally, he spoke, voice low. "Are you going to dinner with him?" Katie held his gaze, feeling a mix of anger and something dangerous. Hope. "Yes," she said firmly. "I am." Charles's lips tightened, but he said nothing more. He turned and left the kitchen, leaving his coffee untouched. The restaurant James chose was a gem in Seattle's Pike Place market, with soft lighting from chandeliers and the faint sound of a jazz pianist. Katie wore a pale blue dress with a subtle neckline, its fit accentuating her frame. When she arrived, James was waiting, sharp in a grey blazer, his warm smile lighting up his face. "You look stunning," he said, standing to pull out her chair. "Thank you," she replied, a shy smile breaking through. She felt alive, noticed, something she hadn't felt in years. The dinner flowed effortlessly. James was a natural conversationalist, sharing stories of his travels to London and Tokyo, asking about her interests, laughing at her quips. For the first time in ages, Katie felt like more than a shadow. They discussed investment strategies, startup ideas, even books she loved, things Charles never cared to know. "You have a spark, Katie," James said, leaning slightly over the table. "It's a shame not everyone sees it." She smiled, but a twinge of unease hit her. The comment, though flattering, carried an intention she wasn't ready to explore. "Not everyone gets the chance to," she replied, glancing at her wine glass. Meanwhile, across town in their Belltown mansion, Charles sat in his study, the computer screen dark. He held a glass of bourbon but didn't drink. His mind was elsewhere, on Katie's smile to James, on how at ease she seemed with another man. He'd never felt jealousy before, and it burned like poison, unraveling his usual calm. He tried to work, but the spreadsheets blurred. He grabbed his phone and saw an old text from a colleague about the gala. "Your wife stole the show." Charles closed his eyes, trying to erase the image of her, radiant, charming other men. Why did it bother him so much? On impulse, he grabbed his car keys. He wasn't sure what he'd do, but he couldn't stay still. At the restaurant, dinner was wrapping up. James paid the bill, then reached across the table, lightly touching Katie's fingers. "I hope we can do this again," he said, his tone soft but suggestive. "It's been delightful." She gently pulled her hand back, smiling to soften the gesture. "It was a lovely evening, James, but I'm a married woman. A marriage that doesn't seem very present," he replied, tilting his head. "You deserve more, Katie." Before she could respond, a shadow fell over the table. Charles stood there, his face a mask of control, but his eyes burned with something raw. "Katie," he said, voice sharp. "Time to go." James raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Charles, what a surprise. Didn't know you'd be joining us." "I'm not," Charles said, eyes locked on Katie. "I'm here for my wife." The air grew thick. Katie's heart raced, not from fear but from something she couldn't name. "I can find my way home, Charles," she said, keeping her voice steady. "You didn't need to come." "Maybe I wanted to," he countered, and there was a vulnerability in his voice she'd never heard before. James stood, adjusting his blazer. "Well, looks like the night's over. Katie, it was a pleasure. Charles, take care." He left, leaving an awkward silence. In the car, the drive was quiet but charged. Katie stared out the window, processing what had happened. Charles gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. "Why did you go to the restaurant?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Because—" He hesitated, a rare occurrence. "Because I couldn't stay home knowing you were with him." She turned to him, stunned. "You never cared before." "Maybe I was an idiot before," he said, voice rough. "Maybe I'm starting to see things I didn't before." Katie's chest tightened. It was the first time he'd admitted anything like this, but she wasn't sure she could trust it. "You can't just decide to care now, Charles. Not after treating me like furniture for so long." He pulled into the mansion's garage and faced her. For once, his eyes lacked their usual coldness. "I know I failed you," he said, "but last night, at the event, and today, I saw who you are, and I can't stop thinking about it." She opened the car door but paused, looking at him. "If you want me to believe that, Charles, you'll need to do more than crash my dinner." She climbed the stairs without looking back, her heart racing. Something had shifted between them, something dangerous and new. Charles stayed in the car, her words echoing in his mind. For the first time he felt fear, not of losing her to another man, but of never having the chance to truly know her. The next morning, Katie woke to the soft chirping of birds outside, but the calm didn't match the storm in her chest. The previous night replayed in her mind, Charles showing up, his hesitant confession, the look in his eyes. Was it anger at his indifference? Curiosity about this new Charles? Or worse, hope that things could change? She descended the stairs cautiously, expecting an empty kitchen. But Charles was there, stirring something in a pan. The smell of eggs and toast filled the air. He wore a simple grey t-shirt and sweatpants, a version so casual she barely recognized him. "Morning," he said, turning with a shy smile. "Made breakfast." She stopped in the doorway, arms crossed. "You never make breakfast." "Maybe I'm trying something new," he replied, setting a plate of scrambled eggs and toast on the table. Sit, please. Katie hesitated but sat, curiosity winning out. Her posture remained stiff. What's going on, Charles? First the event, then the dinner, now this. What do you want? He sat across from her, his hazel eyes steady. I want to talk, really talk. Talk? She laughed, incredulous. You want to talk now? I know, I've been blind, he said, voice low. I was an idiot. The words caught her off guard. There was sincerity in them, but Katie didn't want to be swayed. Seeing isn't enough, she said sharply. You can't erase years with scrambled eggs. Charles nodded, taking the hit. I'm not trying to erase. I'm trying to start, if you'll let me. She stared at the untouched plate. Why now, because of James? No, he said quickly. Or maybe a little. He made me see how blind I've been. But it's not just jealousy, Katie. It's you, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you stand up to things. I never saw it before, and now I can't stop thinking about it. Her heart quickened, but she kept her face neutral. I want you to work with me at Bennett Enterprises, he said. You have a business degree, an MBA. You're brilliant, always have been. I want you in the company, not as my wife, but as someone who can make a difference. Katie blinked, stunned. You're serious? Completely, he said. Join the strategic planning team, show what you can do, and maybe we can get to know each other better. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of pride and doubt. It was everything she'd ever wanted, to be seen, valued, given a chance to shine. But distrust held her back. And if I say no? Charles gave a sad smile. Then I'll keep trying, but I hope you say yes. She looked at the cold eggs and made a decision. I'll think about it, she said, standing. The next few days were a careful dance. Charles seemed determined to prove his words weren't empty. He came home earlier, asked about her day, tried to talk about books or movies. Katie responded cautiously, keeping her guard up, but she couldn't deny something was changing. The house, once a tomb of silence, began to feel alive. On Friday, she accepted the job at Bennett Enterprises. She arrived at the office in a sharp white dress, hair in an elegant updo. Charles introduced her to the team as Katie Johnson, our new strategist, without mentioning she was his wife. She liked that. For the first time, she was valued for who she was, not the name she carried. The work was challenging, but exhilarating. Katie dove into market analyses, client meetings, and expansion proposals. The team respected her, and her insights caught the attention of the directors. Charles watched from afar, pride swelling in a way he didn't fully understand. One evening, after a long meeting, he invited her for coffee on the office's rooftop terrace. The Seattle skyline sparkled below, stars above. You're impressing everyone, he said, handing her a steaming mug, including me. Charles set his mug on the ledge and took her hand, a gesture so unexpected she didn't pull away. Because I feel something I've never felt before, he said, voice rough. I can't explain it, Katie. But when I see you, hear you, it's like I woke up from a dream. I want to be the man you deserve if you'll let me try. The words hit her like a wave. She wanted to doubt, to protect herself, but something in his eyes, fear and hope, made her pause. You have a lot to prove, she said softly. I know, he replied, and for the first time their fingers intertwined. Weeks later, the mansion felt different. Charles kept surprising her with small gestures, a flower on her desk, a text asking if she needed anything, an invite to lunch. Katie began to let her guard down, laughing at his jokes, sharing stories from her childhood, feeling the warmth of his presence. One Saturday night, he invited her to dinner at home, something they'd never done. The table was set with candles, and Charles had made a lemon risotto, imperfect but heartfelt. I'm no chef, he said, laughing, but I hope it's edible. She laughed, the sound filling his heart. Over dinner, they talked about everything, dreams, fears, memories. Katie shared her love for painting, something she'd abandoned after the marriage. Charles promised to buy her canvases and paints. After dinner, they sat on the couch, a bottle of wine between them. The conversation faded, but the silence was comfortable. Charles looked at her, his eyes glowing in the candlelight. Katie, he said, voice deep, I've fallen in love with you. She froze, wine glass halfway to her mouth. Charles. He leaned in and kissed her, a shy, hesitant kiss full of promise. That night they gave themselves to each other, their touches careful and emotions raw. When Charles realized she was still a virgin, he stopped, eyes wide. "You've never—" She blushed but held his gaze. "There's never been anyone, Charles. Now it's you." He pulled her close, kissing her with passion. That night, Katie fell asleep in his arms, feeling like she belonged there for the first time. Charles stayed awake watching her, his heart full of certainty. He'd do anything to keep her by his side. But a shadow lingered in his mind. A secret he hadn't yet revealed. A contract that could change everything if she found out. Morning light filtered through the heavy curtains of Katie's bedroom, but she didn't rise immediately. She lay staring at the ceiling, processing the emotions from the night before, giving herself to Charles, the shared vulnerability, the warmth of his arms. It felt like a dream, but also a tightrope. She wanted to believe in this new Charles, the one who promised love, but a voice whispered caution. In the kitchen, the coffee maker's hum broke the silence. Charles had left for the office, leaving a note on the counter. "Early meeting, loved our night, see you at the office. You're killing it on the team." Katie smiled as she read it. She decided to head to the office early, eager to dive into work and maybe catch Charles beforehand. She wore a sleek grey suit, hair in a low ponytail, and drove to Bennett Enterprises' gleaming headquarters in downtown Seattle. Charles wasn't there. During a coffee break in the lounge, she noticed he hadn't shown up all day. He'd mentioned a meeting, but something felt off. Curious, she headed to his office on the top floor. His assistant, Sarah, was on the phone, so Katie slipped in unnoticed. Charles's office was pristine, with dark wood furniture and a panoramic view of Puget Sound. Papers were scattered on his desk, unusual for the meticulous man she knew. She sat in his chair almost on impulse and started flipping through the documents, financial reports, partnership contracts, nothing unusual, until a blue folder tucked under a pile caught her eye. The cover read, "Merger Agreement, Bennett Enterprises and Johnson Imports." Her heart pounded. She opened it with trembling hands, each word hitting like a punch. The document, dated years ago, outlined the merger of their family's companies. A bolded clause made her stomach churn. As part of the agreement, Katie Johnson will be united in marriage to Charles Bennett, ensuring asset consolidation and financial stability for both parties. Her breath caught. The marriage, which she knew was arranged, wasn't just convenience. It was a cold business transaction signed by her father and Charles's. A handwritten note in the margin, in her father's script, read, "Ensure discretion of the marital clause to avoid resistance from the bride." Katie closed the folder, hands shaking so much she could barely hold it. She felt betrayed, sold, reduced to a line in a contract. Everything Charles had said recently, the love, the promises, the gestures, felt like a lie. Was he manipulating her to keep her in the deal? Was his jealousy, his awakening, just a ploy to protect the company's interests? She heard footsteps and quickly tucked the folder back. When Charles entered, his smile fading at her expression, Katie was already standing, arms crossed. "Katie, what's wrong?" he asked, stepping toward her. "I know everything," she said, voice cold but laced with pain. "The contract, the merger, the reason you chose me as your wife." Charles froze, his face paling. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter how," she snapped. "What matters is you knew. Knew I was just a pawn in a business game. And still you let me live like a ghost in that house while you reap the profits of my humiliation." "It's not like that," he said, stepping forward. "In the beginning, yes, it was an agreement. But now what?" She laughed, a bitter sound echoing in the office. "Now you say you love me? That you've changed? How can I believe that, Charles, when it all started with a lie?" "Because it's true." His voice rose, not in anger, but desperation. "I didn't see you before, Katie. I was blind, caught up in business expectations. But at that event, when I saw who you really are, everything changed. I fell in love with you. Not the contract, not the company. You." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You expect me to believe that, after finding out my own parents sold me? That you went along with it without ever asking what I wanted? Were you scared I'd fall for James and leave you, ruining your precious deal? No, he said, anguished. I know I messed up. I should have been honest from the start, but please listen. I didn't want to hurt you. At first it was just business, but now you're everything to me. Everything to you? She stepped back, words sharp. You don't know what I felt reading that contract. How used, how betrayed I felt. My parents sold me, Charles, and you were complicit. I didn't want this, he said, voice breaking. I went along because it's what my family expected. But I swear, Katie, what I feel now is real. I love you. Love doesn't start with lies, she shot back. She grabbed her purse and the blue folder, holding it like evidence. I need space. Don't follow me. She left the office, ignoring his call. Outside, the cool Seattle air hit her like a slap, but it didn't ease the pain in her chest. She drove aimlessly, the folder on the passenger seat like a dead weight. She ended up at a park by Lake Washington, sitting on a bench, face buried in her hands. Memories of the past weeks flooded back. The breakfast, the job, the night they gave themselves to each other. It had felt so real, but now she wondered if Charles had orchestrated every step to keep her in line. Her parents' betrayal cut even deeper. How could they sell their daughter for a merger? Hours later, as the sun began to set, Katie made a decision. She couldn't go home. Not yet. She called a boutique hotel in Capitol Hill and booked a room. She needed time to think, to understand her feelings, to decide her next move. In the hotel room, she tossed the folder on the desk and lay down, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed with Charles's messages. Please call me. I love you, we can talk. I don't want to lose you. She deleted them without reading further. The pain was suffocating, but a small part of her still heard Charles's voice, the sincerity in his eyes. What if he was telling the truth? What if his love was real despite everything? But how could she trust again after such a betrayal? That night, Katie cried herself to sleep, the blue folder beside her. Deep down, she knew answers wouldn't come easily, but she also knew she wasn't the invisible woman from 2 years ago. Whatever the future held, she'd face it with the strength she'd found in herself. Katie woke to the muffled sounds of Seattle filtering through the hotel window. She took a hot shower, hoping the steam would clear her confusion. Charles's devastated face in the office lingered in her mind. He seemed broken, but was it genuine? Or just fear of losing control over the deal? And her parents, how could she face them knowing they'd sold her for a merger? She dressed in a light blouse and jeans, something simple that felt like her, not the wife of a CEO or a contracts pawn. Downstairs in the hotel restaurant, the food tasted bland. While stirring her cappuccino, a sudden nausea made her drop the spoon. Odd, she thought, probably stress. She ignored it and checked her phone. Missed calls from Charles and a text from her mother. Sweetie, we need to talk. Call me. Katie deleted it without replying. She decided to walk through the city to clear her head. Seattle's downtown buzzed with commuters and street vendors. She passed a bookstore and stepped inside, drawn by the smell of paper. She flipped through a novel, but the words felt distant. Sitting in an armchair in the corner, she tried to sort her thoughts. She wanted space, but also answers. She wanted to forgive, but pride held her back. And above all, she wanted to understand what she felt for Charles. By late afternoon, she returned to the hotel exhausted. An envelope had been slipped under her door, bearing Bennett Enterprises' logo. She opened it hesitantly and found a handwritten letter in Charles's steady script. Katie, I don't know if you'll read this, but I have to try. No words can undo what I did or didn't do these past years. I accepted the contract because it's what I was taught, business above all. But you changed that. You made me want to be more than a CEO, more than a signature. I love you, not out of guilt or fear. It's because you're the most incredible woman I've ever met. If you need space, I'll respect that. But please know I'm fighting for you. Don't give up on us, Charles. The letter shook in her hands. Katie felt tears return, not just from pain, but from an emotion she didn't want to name. She tucked the letter into her purse and decided she needed more time. She called the hotel and extended her stay for 2 more days. Meanwhile, at Bennett Enterprises, Charles was unrecognizable. He cancelled meetings, ignored emails, and spent hours staring at the sound from his office. Sarah, his assistant, entered with a stack of documents but hesitated. "Mr. Bennett, everything okay?" she asked cautiously. "No," he said bluntly, "but it will be." Sarah raised an eyebrow but didn't press. After she left, Charles called the company's lawyer, David. "I want an emergency board meeting," he said. "Today, 6 p.m., and invite Johnson Imports representatives." David sounded confused. "About what, Charles? The merger's stable, the numbers—" "It's not about numbers," Charles cut in. "It's bigger than that." That evening, the conference room at Bennett Enterprises was packed. Directors exchanged curious glances, while Johnson Imports representatives, including Katie's father, Robert Johnson, waited impatiently. Charles entered, sharp in a dark suit, but with a determination that charged the air. "Gentlemen," he began, no preamble, "we're here to discuss the merger between our companies, or rather to end it." A murmur rippled through the room. Robert stood, face red. "What are you talking about, Charles? That deal saved us." "I know," Charles said, calm but firm, "but it cost something priceless, Katie." Her name hung like a bomb. Robert faltered but pressed on. "This is nonsense. The marriage was consensual. It wasn't consensual," Charles cut in, voice sharp. "She was manipulated. By you, by my father, and I went along with it, but no more." He opened a folder and slid a document across the table. "This is the dissolution plan. Bennett Enterprises will return all Johnson Imports shares, no financial compensation. As of today, our companies are separate." The silence was deafening. A director coughed, incredulous. "Charles, this will cost billions. The board won't approve." "I've already approved it," Charles said, meeting their eyes. "As majority shareholder, my decision is final, and to ensure no doubts, I'm resigning as CEO, effective immediately." Robert slammed the table. "Have you lost your mind? Over a woman?" "Not over a woman," Charles shot back, standing. "Over your daughter. The woman worth more than any fortune, any company, any contract. Katie isn't a pawn. She's my wife, and I'll prove it with more than words." He left the room, ignoring stunned stares. In the halls, he brushed past employees' shocked looks. He drove to Katie's hotel but hesitated at the entrance. He didn't want to force her. Instead, he left another envelope at the front desk with a single note. "I did what I should have done years ago. You're free. But if you want, I'll be waiting." The next day, Katie received the envelope. She opened it, heart racing, but the note was too brief to explain everything. She turned on the TV and the news was everywhere. Charles Bennett resigns as CEO of Bennett Enterprises, dissolves billion-dollar merger with Johnson Imports. Analysts speculated, but none mentioned her name. Her world tilted. Charles had given up everything, his company, his power, the wealth that defined him, for her. That afternoon, another wave of nausea hit, stronger. On impulse, she went to a nearby pharmacy and bought a pregnancy test. In the hotel bathroom, she stared at the 2 lines on the stick, a mix of shock and awe washing over her. She was pregnant, Charles's child, conceived in their night of mutual surrender. The news changed everything. Katie held the test, tears falling freely. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the life she carried, the future she had to build. She decided to confront her parents before deciding anything else. She drove to their house in Bellevue, the blue folder on the passenger seat. When her mother Linda opened the door, Katie didn't waste time. "Why did you do this to me?" she asked, holding up the document. Linda paled. "Honey, it was for our good." "Our good?" Katie laughed bitterly. "You sold me like I was merchandise." Robert appeared, face tense. "You don't understand, Katie. The company was collapsing. It was the only way." "And I was the price," she said, voice shaking. "You never asked what I wanted. And now Charles undid it all, threw away billions, and you still think you were right." Linda began to cry, but Katie didn't yield. "I needed to hear this from you," she said, "but I won't carry the weight of your choices anymore." She left without looking back, feeling lighter but still lost. The baby changed everything, but pride kept her from reaching out to Charles. She needed time to decide if his love could outweigh the pain he'd caused. That night, back at the hotel, Katie fell asleep with her hand on her stomach, dreaming of a future she couldn't yet see. But for the first time, she felt she had the power to choose it. Morning came, and Katie sat on the bed's edge. the pregnancy tests 2 lines staring back like a living secret. She needed to face Charles, not as the wife of a deal, but as the woman carrying their child. She wore a light white cotton dress, a symbol of a fresh start, and drove to the mansion. The familiar route felt new, each turn carrying a promise. She parked in the garage, took a deep breath and entered, her heart pounding. The house was quiet except for sounds from the kitchen. She found Charles there, arranging a tray of fruit and croissants. He wore a blue polo and jeans, a simplicity that still surprised her. When he saw her, his eyes lit with surprise and relief. "Katie," he said, voice soft, almost fearful. "You came." "We need to talk," she replied, keeping her posture firm though her voice wavered. Charles set the tray down and approached, keeping his distance as if afraid to scare her. "I know I don't deserve you being here," he began, "but I'm so glad you came. Stop," she interrupted, raising a hand. "I saw the news, Charles. You dissolved the merger, resigned from the company." He met her eyes, unwavering. "You're worth more. I don't want to live in a world where you think you're just a clause in a contract. I love you, Katie, and if that means giving up everything, I'd do it without a second thought." Charles stepped closer, eyes shining. "You're a brilliant, strong woman who made me want to be better. I'm asking for a chance to build something real together." Tears threatened, but she held them back. "I found out something, Charles," she said, voice nearly a whisper. "Something that changes everything." He frowned, worried. "What?" Katie took a deep breath, hands instinctively touching her stomach. "I'm pregnant." The silence was profound, as if the world stopped. Charles blinked, his face shifting through shock, joy, and fear. Suddenly, he dropped to his knees before her, hands trembling as he held hers. Tears streamed down his face, something Katie never thought she'd see. "A baby?" he asked, voice choked. "Our baby?" She nodded, tears now falling freely. "Yes, ours." Charles pulled her into a careful embrace as if she might break. "I swear, Katie," he murmured into her hair, "I'll be the man you and our baby deserve. I'll spend my life proving it." She let herself rest in his arms, the warmth easing her pain. The following days were about rebuilding. Katie returned to the mansion but insisted on her own room for now. She needed space to process, to trust slowly. Charles respected it, but stayed close. He made breakfast daily, asked about her prenatal appointments and attended them all, even started reading parenting books, which made her laugh. One afternoon he surprised her with a proposal as they walked through the mansion's garden. "I want us to start something together," he said. "A company just ours, not Bennett Enterprises, not Johnson Imports, something that's us." Katie raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "A company?" "Yeah," he said, excited. "Johnson and Bennett Consulting. You've got the mind for strategy, I've got the experience. We could help small businesses grow, do something meaningful." She smiled, the idea sparking something inside her. "I like it," she admitted, "but it's got to be equal. Partners, not boss and subordinate." "Partners," he agreed, extending his hand. She shook it, feeling a warmth beyond the touch. Weeks later, Katie decided it was time for something bigger. Over a quiet dinner, she said, "I want to marry you again, Charles. But this time by choice, a real marriage." Charles was speechless, eyes shining. "You're sure?" "Yes," she said. "I want our child to know their parents chose each other, not that they were forced." They planned a small, meaningful ceremony in a coastal garden near Puget Sound. Katie wore a flowing dress with flowers in her hair, Charles a light linen suit. No investors, no contracts, just close friends, the sea breeze, and a love that had blossomed despite everything. During the vows, Charles held her hands and said, "I promise to be the man you deserve, and I'll keep that every day. You taught me what love is, Katie. And now, with our child coming, I promise to love and protect our family with everything I am." She smiled, tears falling. "You saw me when I was invisible, Charles, and now I choose you, not out of duty, but because I love you." Their kiss sealed the promise, amid applause and crashing waves. That night, they danced under the stars, laughing as the past's weight finally lifted. Months later, Johnson and Bennett Consulting opened its doors. Focused on mentoring small businesses, it became an unexpected success. Katie led with innovative vision, Charles brought his expertise, and they worked side by side, true partners. The company grew so fast they had to hire a team. When their daughter Lily was born, with Charles's hazel eyes and Katie's smile, life felt complete. Her baptism was another celebration of love, with Lily in her parents' arms, surrounded by those who'd witnessed their journey. That night, as Lily slept in her crib, Katie and Charles sat on the terrace, gazing at the stars. The past, with its pain and secrets, was now a shadow. The future, with their daughter and their company, shone like a horizon full of promise. And so, what began as a cold contract became a true love story. Not perfect, but chosen, earned, and above all, surprising.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.